All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Bruce from the Epic Experiment Podcast, back with another deck tech. This week we are rocking Ziatora the Incinerator. This is a Jun-colored deck, so black, red, and green. So what does Ziatora say? She is a 6 mana, so 3 black, red, green for a 6/6 flying legendary creature demon dragon. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Ziatora the Incinerator deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. I really like Ziatora because it does 2 things really, really well. The first one, big old 6/6 flying monster. That's going to be a pretty surefire way to end a lot of games pretty quick. This is commander damage. But the fling ability that she can throw another creature at your opponents and make treasure is a pretty amazing ability that I think people have underrated. So this deck is a Jun-colored sacrifice deck that is looking to land a bunch of creatures, throw them at your opponents, and get everybody dead. So let's talk about how we're going to make this work. First off, you got to get your Ziatora into play, because if without Ziatora, you could stack your deck full of fling effects, but if you can't get your big things into play, it doesn't matter. All right, so we're playing Jorn. Jorn is 2 and a red for a 3/2. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. So if you're playing treasures, you want to play that one. You also want to play an Academy Manufactor. If you would create a clue, a food, or a treasure token, instead create 1 of each. Well, since you're making treasures, you're going to have a whole bunch of extra artifacts kicking around. We have a Rampant Growth to get more things into play. We've got the good old Sol Ring. We've got an Arcane Signet. Then we have a Tireless Provision. This doesn't normally feel like ramp, but in this sort of deck, when you're looking to play lots of treasures, the landfall ability in the Tireless Provisioner is pretty strong, in that you just always pick the mode that puts more treasures into play. All right, we have Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. This doesn't look like a ramp piece either until you read it very carefully. It says, tokens you control have tapped to add a green. So any of your treasure tokens can now be tapped as a Mox Emerald and make you green mana. And since you're throwing your creatures at your opponents to make lots of treasures, you're going to get good use out of it. Ornithopter of Paradise, again, mana rock. Then we have a Goblin, a Narcomancer, and a Honest Rutstein. So these are both going to help you reduce the mana cost of creature spells by 1, helping you to get more creatures into play. Now, Rutstein is an interesting card, and I think is an underrated piece of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, is that it's a powerful reanimator effect, too. So this particular deck, because of the fact it wants to throw its creatures away so readily, Honest Rutstein and the reanimation package is super important in order to get this deck humming, all right? So you can buy a creature back with your Honest Rutstein. We've got Animate Dead, which is a classic old enchantment from years ago. I even got it in revised, so it's got the weird old text on it. But you can bring a creature back from your graveyard, put it back on the battlefield. We've got, what else we got? We got Reanimate, which is the real namesake card. Put target creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. You probably don't care in this deck, but we'll talk about why in a second. We've got some things like Rakdos joins up. So this is a new one for Outlaw Junction. So 3 black red. When Rakdos joins up and as a battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. Perfect. So I get to throw something big and then I get to reanimate it. Whenever a legendary creature you control dies, Rakdos joins up, deals damage equal to that creature's power to target opponent. Well, since I'm throwing creatures at my opponents anyway and they're going to die, you're going to trigger that one pretty readily. Timeless Witness is going to bring things back. We've got a Riveteer's Ascendancy, which is a neat enchantment. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may return target creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Do this only once each turn. So, I could sacrifice my, Omnath, Locus of Rage, and I could go and get back my, maybe a Lord of Extinction. That sounds like fun. Those are 2 fabulous cards to reanimate back. Okay? Then we have a Buried Alive. Buried Alive is going to make sure I can put creatures in my graveyard. So let's say I have some reanimation targets or choices in my hand, I can go and put some good targets into my graveyard and get them onto the battlefield potentially cheaper. We've got a Malakir Rebirth, which is a really useful ability. So you can use it on a creature. So let's say you want to throw your Lord of Extinction at your opponent again. You can cast the Malakir Rebirth on it so that when Lord of Extinction dies, it comes back to the battlefield. Or you can use it to protect your commander, which sometimes is really useful when your opponents get wise to the idea of you having to make use of it. We have an Unmarked Grave. Search your library for a non-legendary card, put that card onto under your graveyard, then shuffle. So again, put your Lord of Extinction into your graveyard and then go and get it to put it into play. All right. Then we've got a few other tricks. We've got a Felled into the Third Path. This guy's a great little one. 2 and a red, tap, create a token as a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except as an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. So this doesn't even exile it out of your graveyard. It just makes a copy of your Lord of Extinction, which you're going to throw at your opponent's face. Then we have these 2 cards, Lich Knight's Conquest and Bringer of the Last Gift. These are going to be ways to reanimate many things all at once. So they're going to be really useful to mass reanimating a whole pile of things. Then we have some card draw. We want to draw all the cards, so we're going to Greater Good, best tool I've got. So you're playing big fat creatures. Let's say you're Lord of Extinction, and it's it's a 10/10 or more. You sacrifice it to Greater Good. You're going to refill your grip in a heartbeat, and your opponents are going to be very sad. So Greater Grip is terrific. Cathartic Reunion, cheap little interactive spell. Gets you going. As an additional cost, discard 2 cards. So put your creatures in your graveyard, and then you can draw 3. We have a Rakdos the Muscle. This one's really neat. So 2 black, red. So a lot of hype around this one for a 6/5. Sorry, a lot of hype for this one in CEDH. But the text here: whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to the mana value from the top of the target player's library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards, and mana of any type you cast suspend them. And sacrifice another creature, Rakdos the Muscle gains indestructible until end of turn, tap it, activate only once each turn. Well, you're going to sack things to Ziatora, you're going to sack to the Greater Good, you're going to sack to all sorts of things, and now you get to Impulse Draw, put all those creatures out, or all those cards out to play. We've got things like a Brea's Disciple, so I'm making a lot of artifacts with this particular deck. So this particular thing is tap, sacrifice an artifact, and then exile the top card of your library until the end of your turn. Until your next turn, you may play that card. Super useful way to just make sure you keep the flow of cards coming. Insatiable Avarice is going to be a good one. So you spend the mode. That's black. Target player draws 3 cards, lose 3 life. Deadly Dispute, sack a artifact or a creature to draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. So since I have lots of treasures laying around, you're going to be able to make good use of it. The Gitrog, Ravenous Ride, is very similar to a Greater Good, so this is super useful for you too. We've got Vraska Joins Up. This doesn't look like a huge ability, but whenever a legendary creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you would draw a card. Well, your commander is a legendary creature, and it is flying, so you're going to probably connect with this a few times, got a few cards off of it. Pillage the Bog is a tutor effect, or sort of a tutor effect. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is twice the number of lands you control. So that's pretty handy. The last one here is Blex Vexing Pest, which is super handy. So what people forget about Vex, or Blex is the back, where you search for Blex. 2 black, look at the top 5 cards of your library, and you put any number of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way. So this is like a souped up Sylvan Library, but only for a single turn. So if you've blown a bunch of cards and you're running low on things in your hand, you can turn Blex over and get a whole bunch of cards. Or if you don't really need the cards right now, you've got yourself a creature that you can fling at your opponents. Perfect. What else am I flinging along with Blex? All right, well, Lord of Extinction I've mentioned a bunch of times. This thing is silly. Lord of Extinction's power is equal to the number of cards in all graveyards, so it's often very, very large. Omnath, Locus of Rage, is excellent because it's going to make extra bodies that you can fling at your opponents. So all those extra elementals are just going to make for great fodder for Ziatora. We've got a Metalwork Colossus. This one's really good. Because of the ability to sacrifice 2 artifacts, namely your your treasure tokens, that you can put it back into your hand. So you can recast it and fling it again. We have Optimus Prime, or actually, this is actually Darksteel Colossus. Seems good to me. It's flinging a giant thing. Hoarding Broodlord. This is a tutor effect. Has some convoke to it, and so that. But then on top of it is just a big old dragon that you can fly with, or you can fling it at your opponent's face. Oh, we have a World Spine Worm. Oh, look at you, World Spine Worm. This is. I don't think there's many targets that are better than this. So this is a 15/15, and when it dies, because you flung it at your opponent, it makes 3 more things you can throw at them and kill them dead. Sounds good. Daemogoth Titan, so 4 mana for an 11/10. So this, you don't even care what the rest of the text is on. You just see, oh, 11? Yeah, I'm throwing this at my opponent. Mr. Orfeo. Oh, I love Mr. Orfeo. This guy, whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. So if you attack with something, it doubles up someone's power, and then you get to fling it in their face. Pugnacious Hammer Skull. So this is really cheap. 3 mana for a 6/6. You don't even care about the rest of the text. You're going to throw it at somebody's face. All right, we have Wandering Archaic. This is just a value creature, but you know, every once in a while it's fun to flip it. Throw it at them, or if you need to, you can go and get some lands with on the back. Decadent Dragon. You've got 2 modes on it. One's going to be to go steal stuff from them. The other one is just going to let you go and just throw a dragon at them and just want more treasures. And last but not least, we have a Megatron or a Darksteel Colossus. Well, with all those fun things and big creatures, I need something to do. I want to have those creatures come in with haste. I want them to come in and really make things hard for my opponents. So we've got Helena and Elena, partners. So the text on this one that really matters. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X plus 1/1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Helena and Elena's power. That creature gains haste. Perfect. Makes your dragon a hasty creature, or makes whatever you play it hasty. Fires the Avamaya, creatures you control have haste. The rest don't matter. Rhythm of the Wilds. Creatures you control have Riot, which means they can come in with haste, or they come in with an extra +1/+1 counter. Guess what you're picking most of the time. We have a Sneak Attack. Well, this means your creatures have haste. They come into play, and then before the sack trigger at the end of the turn, you're going to fling it at your opponent. Sounds fun to me. We have a Xenagos, God of Revels. This one's fun. It's a 6/5 indestructible god for 3 red and a green. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, it isn't a creature. But at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So if you have a Lord of Extinction into play, along with your Xenagos and a Ziatora, you get to double up the Lord of Extinction's power, and then you get to fling it at somebody's face with the Ziatora, and then they're probably dead. And then last but not least, our haste enabler, we have Handler Battlements. I'm not running the other half to get the Eldrazi creature, but this is super useful in terms of making some big scary stuff. Then we've got some interaction, and we've got a few other interesting effects over here. So with the interaction, you don't need as much of it as you would play otherwise, because of the fact Ziatora is a source of removal. So Culling Ritual, this one's handy. You wouldn't normally want to say, oh, I want to destroy all my own treasures, but when you do, you make a whole pile of mana, and you can do something really gross with it. We've got a Roller Crusher Ride. So this is X, 2, and a red with a legendary enchantment with Delirium. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player while there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, it deals double that damage. When the Roller Crusher Ride enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. This is a surefire way to clear the board of your opponent's stuff. Hogger Mauling. On one side, this is a destroy target creature, and then on the back is a land if you need it. All right, we've got a Vandal Blast. This is going to make sure you wreck your opponent's artifacts. Tear Asunder, flexible removal. Heck, you want to move an enchantment or an artifact, you can just pay it without the kicker. Yeah, maybe you want to remove a non-land permanent. Got to pay 4 mana, pay the kicker, get rid of it. Sounds good. Blasphemous Act, board wipe. Just going to burn out the table for 13. Looks good. Cooligan's Command. It'll kill things, remove artifacts, make your opponent discard cards. Just flexible, useful card. Assassin's Trophy, useful catch-all, just time to get things dead. All right? All those are good pieces of removal. Pretty typical what you're going to find. Then we've got a few other interesting effects in here. So let's talk about Sylvan Safekeeper. Sylvan Safekeeper wants to keep your commander safe so you can make sure that your Ziatora doesn't die. So best way to do that, let's give it some Shroud. Make sure your opponents can't kill it. Blackbait Reforged. Well, if you want to make your power or on your creature bigger, maybe you want to give it a big old sword. And that way you're going to be able to throw a big old scary monster with the sword in hand at your opponents and kill them dead. Yes, please. Sounds good. Now, one thing we haven't talked too much about is all the treasures that Ziatora makes. So Ziatora makes a whole bunch of treasures, and some of it's useful to make sure that she stays on the battlefield because you're going to be able to, pay the commander tax on it pretty handily. However, there comes a point when if you keep throwing creatures at your opponents, you're going to end up with lots of treasures, and you need something to do with it all. So Electro Dominance is a really useful way that you can, burn out something because it says you may deal X damage to any target, including your opponent's face. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So if you have a big creature in your hand or something else scary, you can go and make use of it. Grievous Wound. I like this one. This one's kind of neat. Whenever an enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life rounded up. So if I fling even a rather small creature at my opponent, Grievous Wound is going to make them lose a whole bunch of life. All right, then we've got Pitiless Plunderer. So once you're sacrificing creatures to Ziatora, Pitiless Plunderer is going to look at that and say, yep, we're going to make more treasure. Seems good. And with all that treasure, you're going to play a Revel in Riches just on the off chance that you get to kill somebody with having 10 or more treasures at the beginning of your upkeep. Then we've got a Marionette Master and we've got a Disciple of the Vault. Because we've got so many treasures, we're looking to make sure that we can sacrifice and drain out our opponent. So Disciple of the Vault, that's 1 life at a time. Marionette Master, that could be up to 4 at a time. So if you don't decide to use the Fabricate ability on this creature, it's a 4/6. Now, whenever an artifact you control is put into your graveyard, including all those treasures you just made with Ziatora, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. It'd be very easy to drain your opponent out, or your opponent's out for a ton of life with your Marionette Master. Just bleed them out. All right, we've got real fun deck here. No, it is not cheap. I'm going to be honest with you. Between the mana base, which is in the show notes down below, and the deck itself, we're talking about a $500 deck. So this is not a real cheap deck, but it's a really good example of a bracket 3 deck. In fact, I took it for a spin yesterday with some friends. And I think the gameplay is going to be up on YouTube later for you guys to check out if you're interested. We'll put a link to that when I get a chance to. And what happened is Ziatora won the game by virtue of being a big old commander damage beat stick and flinging some things around, knocking some opponents out of the game. Super fun deck. You got to be into the mood for sacrificing things as Jun does. But if you are, have a look. Maybe it's for you. You're going to have a lot of fun. Well, thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. This is Bruce from the Epic Experiments podcast. Signing off. You can find the list and all of our other content down below in the show notes. Until then, folks, be good. Talk to you again soon.